Hello. Hello, and welcome to the 1912 Exiles podcast, the original, the biggest, the best Newport County podcast made by the fans for the fans. We're brought to you, as always, by the Terrace Cymru Podcast Network, and of course, in association with a wonderful crew down at the Riverside Sports Bar in Newport, the city's home for live sport, with a great menu to get your burger fix. I'm your host, Ian, and I'm joined tonight by Reese and Ed. How are we, gents?
Determined to be upbeat is how I am tonight. I had two people independently come up to me at the game yesterday and say, "I usually listen to the podcast, but it's so depressing at the moment. I don't think I can bear to." And I think Jamie's episode last weekend pushed people over the edge. So I promised we would try to find some light amongst the gloom.
Yeah, it's nearly Christmas. There's the light.
So, well, as Ed was saying, we're only too aware. Recent episodes have been a bit gloomy. I mean, we can only reflect on what's happening on the pitch. But we've obviously been discussing our pretty dreadful games recently. So, although we're going to touch briefly on the Crewe and the Fleetwood games, I think what we're going to do tonight is we're going to try and use this episode to just sort of pan out a little bit. Let's consider some of the bigger issues around the club ahead of Wednesday night's fan forum, which Mr. Jenkins is going to be in attendance. Now, I thought this was quite funny because that might mean, as the listener Diesel said earlier on Twitter, we'll be lightening the mood by not focusing on the shambles on the pitch, but instead we're going to focus on the shambles we become off it. So I thought it was quite funny. But it's a different kind of gloom, isn't it? So, we'll see where we go. And just to let people know, we've got an upcoming Christmas special coming up where we're not going to talk about any of the current shenanigans that's going on. We're going to try and do things a bit lighter, provide a bit of whimsy and a bit of joy, which we've all been sorely lacking, haven't we? So that's what we're going to try and do and get something out before Christmas. But we should, there's been a couple of games since we last reported from Jamie's morose view of the Boreham Wood game. So we're going to briefly touch on the sort of last week, just in sort of 5 minutes, really. We got a 2-2 draw, a battling 2-2 draw at Crewe, to be fair. We came back twice from going behind, one in, the equaliser in the 93rd minute. Did edge us a point closer to safety. And then it all came a bit tumbling down a little bit yesterday in the game at Fleetwood. So let's think about those briefly. That battling point with 10 men. Did we learn anything from that, Reese? Was that helpful at all?
I think if you'd offered people that before the game, you probably would have taken it against a Crewe side that many expected to be kind of up around the top few positions at the start of the season. They're currently sat in 8th, so just with a shout of the playoffs. Again, for the first time in a while, I think we showed that kind of Newport battling spirit, which was a cause for encouragement. Without wanting to dip into the negative too much, the defending for their goals was not great, but we had that fighting spirit. I was hoping that would be the start of the new manager bounce, perhaps. And I think beforehand, an away point is always good, right? Especially an away point to one of the top 10 sides.
Yeah.
The problem we've got is, like, the conventional logic is that you win your home games and pick up points where you can on the road. Unfortunately, we defy conventional logic.
That's because we're keeping teams guessing, aren't we? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to lull people. I think we're going for the whole rope-a-dope strategy, is what we're doing. And I guess after that, I mean, they were all playing for Fuchs, weren't they? And that seemed, that was one of the positives I took from the game. They did seem to be up for it. I was looking forward in a way to the Fleetwood game, thinking, if we can win this, we're right back in, we're right back in the mix, aren't we? Ed, you were there, fairly dispiriting situation. Don't dwell on it too much, but reflections quickly.
What was really interesting is that although I think a lot of us, having perhaps over-invested emotionally in Sunday's game at Boreham Wood, a lot of people will have watched it on the telly. I think a lot of us then distanced ourselves from that Wednesday night game at Crewe and thought, I'm not going to pay too much attention to this because I can't bear to get hurt again so soon afterwards. And then having got that battling unexpected away point, weirdly pre-match around the pubs in Newport and the concourses, there was a palpable sense of optimism, exactly because like you said, Reese, there was a sense of, well, maybe this is where things start to get going now for the manager. He's got, a couple of draws under his belt. All right, the FA Cup game wasn't great, but, we can get a home win now and that will sort of start to change things around. And there was, it wasn't a bad crowd yesterday and people got behind the team. And the first 30 minutes, I thought we played all right. But, I was stood with friend of the pod, David Astidion, and we both said to each other, look, first goal in this is going to be decisive, because it was two teams going toe to toe, both playing quite attacking football, and you just knew if we were the ones who conceded that we would then potentially crumble like we have before, probably quickly concede a second and then the game's gone away from you. And that was exactly what happened. And it's the same thing, that we can play all right for spells, but we will always have a couple of just brain fart moments in defence and ship sloppy goals, and then it's 2-0 and it's half time, and then Spellman gets sent off, at which point you just go, well, the game has gone. And it left me really flat, and I know I'm not the only one. It was a proper punch to the guts, that one. It really was.
And it's interesting that both games we were reduced to 10 men. Both the Crewe and the Fleetwood game, I understand that neither of those, sendings off we could complain about, and both of them, probably the players should know better than what they're doing. Do you think, though, that is an element of, I'm trying to put a slight positive on this, that at least there's an element of players trying to show a bit of spirit and show a bit of fight, and they might have be going about it the wrong way, but we've been sorely lacking in a bit of getting tackles in and challenging and all that sort of stuff. Is there a case to be made that although they made the wrong decisions from a footballing perspective, they were trying to do something?
Well, I'll answer that, and I'll talk about the Spellman sending off and Spellman. And I don't want to rag on Michael Spellman, because he is not the cause of our current decline. He is a symptom of our current decline. I've no doubt. Yeah, I think you're right, Ian. The effort and the application is definitely there from him. That's why he's getting picked. But without wanting to be unkind, the three of us could all put on an amber shirt and run around and have zero impact on a game of 4th Division football. And I just think if we are remotely serious about staying up this year, then I don't want to see Michael Spellman in a Newport County shirt again. There are plenty of others of whom that is also true, but he is the most prominent because he got those bookings, which I think, a cannier, more experienced 4th Division player wouldn't have got. And like I say, the red card killed any chance of us getting back into the game. There were a number of players yesterday who I think will have cemented in Christian Fuchs's mind that they are liabilities. Spellman was one. You could just easily talk about Cam Evans, even Bobby Camwer, who is a shadow of the player that we saw last year. But it was just one of those games where, I'm sure the effort and the application is there from a number of them, but that is not going to be enough.
Reese?
A cannier, more experienced player like CBR.
CBR, yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking.
Mind you, I didn't see his first booking. I only watched the highlights, but the second booking looked a little bit soft to me.
I think their player made a meal of it and knew that if he did so, yeah.
You see a dozen challenges like that in every game.
I think it was really harsh.
You very rarely see a booking for it. But also, if you're on a yellow card, then be a bit cuter about what you're doing.
Yeah, be careful. So, I think that's the thing. Yeah, I agree completely with you, Reese. I think it was a really harsh booking. I think their player made a meal of it. But it's absolutely what you're saying. You're on a yellow. You've got to be really careful, haven't you? If you're going to go into challenges with your arms in the air and stuff like that, you just got to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's disappointing. I think Ed's absolutely right about Spellman. He's not the only one, but you look at him and generally you just think the quality's not there. He shows moments where he'll do something well. He might beat a player or play a good through ball, but those moments aren't consistent enough. And those moments are often followed by, he might beat a player and then blaze one at the corner flag, or just fail in a 5-yard pass. It's those moments of quality and doing the simple things well. And I think that's reflected throughout the squad. I think doing the basics well consistently is kind of what lets us down.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have a little chat maybe a bit later about when we pan out a bit, thinking about maybe what we need to do over the next few weeks once the transfer window opens. And I think, thinking about players, formations, who stays, who goes, I think we need to reflect on that a little bit. And I know that before we get into that, I think that we've got a little bit of action in terms of the points per game ratio, which I don't think is brilliant at the minute, and we are trundling along. We almost touched the red line of safety, but we're trundling along, drifting away from it. So I think the good thing is, if there is a good thing, is that there's clearly a few other clubs that are also struggling, which makes games like the Fleetwood game incredibly frustrating, because we could have won that. We're right in the mix, aren't we? And it's just that I feel myself looking on, you're constantly desperately clinging to let's get a win so we can get into it, and we can never quite get that win. And at some point, if the teams around us do get it, we start getting cut adrift. It's my big fear.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that, and we're basically at the moment 8 points off where we would want to be in order to be above that line. You don't want to see that gap growing anymore, and unfortunately, I mean, we'll come on to it. Things may get better if we can strengthen in January, but because of the nature of that Christmas period, there's a lot of games over the next couple of weeks. They're going to come thick and fast, and if you don't pull yourself up a little bit, then it becomes almost a Herculean task by the time the new year comes around.
From a points per game perspective, we're on course for 30 points, which is a record low for a side without a points deduction, which I think was Darlington previously. So if we finish below 30 points, it'll be a new record for a club without a points deduction. I think Macclesfield had 28 with a 10-point deduction. Sorry.
That's joyful.
Sorry, we were trying to be positive, weren't we? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, even the Dragons have managed to get a win at Rodney Parade now. So, we are the losingest team currently playing at Rodney Parade.
Well, it's getting to a point where for us to claim that kind of 8 points difference back, that for the second half of the season, we've got to play like a promotion team. And it's a long way from here to there in terms of the on-the-field stuff. But as we're going to come on to, I think, there's maybe... Well, Fuchs has already released an article saying that they want to get January signings in. So hopefully there's money to spend and moves to be made that can have a real impact.
Yeah, I mean... It's the points per game stuff is it's challenging, isn't it? But we've got to find some wins from someone and stay in the hunt, I think, until we get through this January stuff. Ed, I actually think the Dragons winning is a really positive thing, because if there's a curse at Rodney Parade, then they've broken it. So we're all right. We're going to win the next game. We're going to win on Boxing Day.
Good.
Right. Okay. Let's before we get into we've done the recent games. Let's have a little bit of a pan out. But before we get into that, let's have a little word from our sponsors. Okay, so right, let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about maybe the elephant in the room, Mr. Jenkins. We haven't really gone back and sort of had a look at the sort of what his plans are, his sort of macro vision, for his tenure. Has he got a plan actually? Because I must admit, I do get baffled by it all. And how does it square with the potential that we are facing relegation, which can't be part of his plan, surely. Where do we think? What do we think his plan actually is, Ed? I mean, that's where I'm coming from. What is his plan, or what do we think his plan is?
Well, I was thinking about this. I took myself off for a walk this afternoon to try and clear my head ahead before we sat down to record the podcast. And we love a tortured analogy on this podcast. I think I decided I have quite similar feelings towards Huw Jenkins as I've got towards Keir Starmer, because I suspect they both came into their job with quite noble and quite honest intentions, but they've not been able to construct a clear and honest narrative about what it is that they're trying to do and why. And they both keep making bizarre decisions which run counter to everything that they have indicated that they want to do. And I know Huw Jenkins is not a super rich man, but I can't see how it's in his interests to cut back so heavily on this squad that we're unable to compete even with teams like Fleetwood and Barrow. And I can't see why he would allow or even encourage things like the tone of the official club communications to become so surreal and embarrassing that it's damaging our brand and our standing amongst clubs. I can't see why he would appoint a succession of promising, well-regarded young coaches and then so obviously be interfering with what they're trying to do. I just think he has allowed his judgment to become clouded, and I think he's lost all of the goodwill that he had 2 years ago. But for me, the bigger question, obviously, and the one I'm sure we'll get asked on Wednesday, is what do we want to happen as fans? Because I don't think, and I'm happy to be corrected, I don't think there is any solid evidence that we have investors queuing up to buy out Mr. Jenkins and offer us an alternative prospectus. We've all heard rumours of names of people who might maybe be interested, but when it comes to stated hard facts, I don't think anyone can say categorically that there is someone waiting in the wings to come in and invest. Maybe that's what we're going to learn on Wednesday. I think we all hope it is. But at the moment, Huw Jenkins is the one paying the bills. And if he's not going to do that, then what's the alternative? I feel like we're in that Simpsons meme of saying we'll trade everything for what's in the magic box, but without knowing who or what that might be.
There's a lot to unpick there. Reece, where do you want to start with some of that?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? That he kind of had this vision of making us a sustainable club, and either the financial or commercial side is proving to be much more of a challenge than he expected, and he's not been able to kind of raise the capital on the commercial side that he thought, and he doesn't have maybe the personal funds to kind of bridge that gap. He talked a lot, I remember when we spoke with him about recruiting players from the local area, and I don't know if that has become a limiting factor in our recruiting. Obviously, we've recruited not solely from the Welsh League, but we've recruited a lot of players from Cardiff, Swansea, or ex-Cardiff and Swansea, or Welsh League. And again, geographically, if you limit yourself to a small pool of players, that seems to affect your competitiveness. So you think we had Bryn Morris and we let him go for essentially location reasons. But when Bryn Morris signed for Newport and moved from Grimsby, he was well aware of where Newport was. So, these situations, and I guess him wanting to recruit locally is to avoid kind of your Bryn Morrises. And prior to that, we had Matt Dolan, who had similar kind of family reasons for wanting to move back north. But by limiting your player pool to essentially one of the smallest areas in the country, if you were limiting your player kind of recruitment to the south and you were including London or kind of wider area, you've got a better chance of picking up good players. I think Ed's completely right that maybe the vision that he had hasn't come to fruition. We seem to be making the same mistakes. We're recruiting from the same pool and we're seeing a decline of quality, essentially. If you look back to the squad for Jenkins' first game in charge, which was Man United at home, not a single player in our squad now, with the exception of Braybrook, who is on loan, would get in that team. And I understand that expense is an issue. We've tried to cut those costs. But in terms of the on-field product, which does drive your kind of off-field revenue as well. Remember when we spoke to Watsy, he says you need to win 1 in 3 at home to keep your fans sticking around. Well, I'd take
1 in 3
30.
months would be a start.
Yeah, precisely. And that's a hard commercial sell, isn't it? Because no one wants to be associated with a losing team. And like you say, sorry, lost my point there.
Sorry, it's because I interrupted you, but like you're spot on. And I mean, our season ticket numbers have remained ridiculously healthy despite poor performance over the last few seasons. Even if we stay up this year, that is going to drop off a cliff because of the porridge that we've been served up this season. So it's not going to get better anytime soon because of what's happened.
We risk as well undoing the hard work of the past. So in the last 10 years, our attendance has grown by about 1,000, our average attendance, give or take. And if we were to continue kind of on our current trajectory or continue performing, if we just scrape survival or we go down, you can't realistically say that those numbers are likely to stay the same. So we end up in this vicious cycle where the crowds are going away, so we have less money. So the on-field product's worse, so we have less money. So the crowds go away. And you end up in like this death spiral is what you don't want to end up in. And you end up, I was going to say the way of Bury, but we've been there before. And that's the real risk, isn't it? And like you said before, Ian, that you're terrified that this reminds you so much of what you saw before.
Yeah, absolutely. It does really worry me. It feels similar, which is one of the things that really concerns me. It didn't feel similar, for example, in the Great Escape years, because I thought there was something else going on that we had. It does feel a bit similar now, which I might get into at some point. But I think what worries me, or what surprises me, is that it's going to cost a lot more money to get out of the conference than it is to stay in the Football League.
Yep.
Is there are a lot. This team in the minute won't keep us in the conference. I don't think it would keep us in the conference. We'd struggle in the conference. We saw that with Boreham Wood, and they're not the best team in the conference. My mate who's been on here before, it was a Rochdale fan. We're going well. York. There's some really Southend. There's some sides in that division that we wouldn't be able to compete with. So from a purely investment business point of view, we have to stay in the league. Surely, from a this is the bit that really baffles me.
Yeah.
You've got to do what you need to do to stay in the league.
I think as well, really, for an investor, our Football League status is the only real asset that we have. We don't own a ground. We don't own a training ground. The only thing we really own is our name, and that's only really worth something if we are successful or at a level that will attract investors and sponsors, which, let's be honest, is being a Football League team. So to lose that status really harms our image. And this goes back to your point about the media and comms, Ed. It's been absolute laughable. I wrote an official letter of complaint to the club about the standard of it, especially around the Remembrance Day article, because that was in really bad taste, likening our performance to wartime. Just as someone who is serving, that really flies in the face of what is good and decent around the armistice, kind of the whole purpose of it. So yeah, we're damaging our brand by appointing an absolute clown. We got straight into beefs already. But our media and comms, we're getting the piss taken out of us by other clubs. we're getting the piss taken out of by our own fans. Why have we gone in this direction? But it's damaging our brand, which damages our kind of investor potential. I just don't understand it.
And if you are in the situation that we are in at the moment, and you're trying to we might have £1 billion to spend in January, but you've got to persuade players to come to the worst team in the entire football league. And so what are the things they're going to want to see? They are going to want to see a team and a club that is taking itself seriously. And like you say, we don't have a training ground of our own, so we're having to beg, borrow and steal from what we can get elsewhere. We don't have a ground of our own, so we're not quite playing second fiddle to the Dragons, because actually I think the arrangement is broadly quite good. But, let's not pretend that we are the main game in town for Rodney Parade. And then you look around at the other stuff and the comms, and you think, is this a club that actually believes in has a mission, a sense of mission, sense of purpose, and like all that stuff? I think if you're a player and you're havering about, do I sign for Newport County or do I stay where I am or go on loan somewhere else, it's those things that weirdly end up costing you players, and costing us players might cost us survival.
Okay, so let's think about Wednesday. We've got the fans forum. Mr. Jenkins is coming along. It's an interesting timing, I think, for me. This, there has been these rumours knocking around of investment. Do you think he's going to pull some sort of rabbit out on the hat on Wednesday? And because if he's not, I'm not sure why we're doing it. But do you think he is? And then my second point to that is it a bit too late? Because my understanding is that the fair play regulations for League Two, the snappily named salary cost management protocol, so that governs what we can spend. Now, my understanding is that the forms for that, your projections for the second half of the season, have to be in on Friday. So, okay, the meeting's on Wednesday, but that doesn't leave you much time, if there is money coming in, to sort those projections out, unless they've already been done. It's already a deal. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think that is exactly why the meeting is coming this week. So that statement has to be in. I saw something on one of the message boards. There's some forms that have to be in with Companies House by a certain date this week, as well as part of the club's normal stuff. And we're down to the rumour mill, but the rumour mill has been saying that a lot of this investment stuff has been brewing for some time. But it, as ever with these things, legally, it's taking a while to dot the I's and cross the T's. And I don't always believe rumours. In fact, I rarely believe rumours. In this case, I think that probably is true. And like you, Ian, I don't think Mr. Jenkins, no matter how much of an inflated opinion of himself he might have, I don't think he would stand up in a room full of angry Newport County fans unless he had some good news to change the dial. I think it would be a kind of suicide mission almost to stand up there without some good news to tell people. So I think there will be news of investment, and I would sincerely hope that they have put in place what they need to do in order that the investment can flow through for the January transfer window. But it's like the old joke. I wouldn't be starting from here. By January, I think, like we've already said, I think we're going to be at the thick end of 10 points adrift, and very probably we still won't have won a home game since before Easter. And I think all you can do at that point, if there is investment, if there is money to spend, is to try and bring in minimum half a dozen experienced fourth division grafters and hope for the best. And we know from Carlisle last season, Forest Green the season before, even that is no guarantee. I think we need a complete overhaul. We can come on to exactly where the priorities are within the squad, but basically it's everywhere. So we are just going to have to hope that there is money. We're then going to have to fling money at it and then pray, because even that is not going to be any guarantee of staying up. We're back into depressing.
No, but I think what's going to be interesting, Ed, and we'll have a little chat about this in terms of what we think we might be able to do, because obviously we're not going to be able to strengthen everywhere, because unless the whatever it is, the shares issue or whatever this might be in terms of investment, unless that's significant enough to give us headroom in the SCMP projections, that limits what you can bring in. So we're not going to be able to strengthen everywhere, I don't think, unless there's something crazy going on. Let's come on to in a minute to talk about what players we think we might need to strengthen. But Reece, I'm interested in your view about the forum. Do you agree with Ed that Hugh's going to pull a rabbit out of the hat, or he's going to eat a bit of humble pie and say, I haven't quite got it right, but we're going to improve? Or what do you think he's going to say?
I really hope he does pull a rabbit out of the hat, to be fair. I think hosting a fan forum without any kind of either kind of a big announcement of investment or, that bit of contrition about, I've kind of cocked this up here. He's really failed to read the room if he doesn't. From what we've heard, he's still heavily involved in the recruitment. It's kind of, as with leadership, the buck kind of stops with him. If we've recruited the wrong managers, we've recruited the wrong players, then, only one person has done that. And fair enough, from a fan point of view, we had our chance to get it right and we couldn't. And we were basically left with sell to Mr. Jenkins or not, is kind of the point we got to. So I did see, it did make me laugh that I saw one person on Twitter say that we'd vote him out. I was like, that's the time for voting Huw Jenkins out is gone. Unless he decides to vote himself out, we don't have the power to do that anymore. So yeah, I really do hope.
There was also something on there about the trust should pass a vote of no confidence in him, and you think, well, they can do that. It won't make any difference at all. We come on to talk to it perhaps later on when we discuss the trust, but he owns 52% of the shares, so it's like when you've got a majority of one in the House of Parliament, you can do what you want. That is just the nature of it. So can I come back, Ian, to something you said earlier? Because you said this was reminiscent to you of 1989. And, for those of us who are of a slightly younger vintage, can I just ask you to kind of tease that out a little bit more and tell us where you think the parallels are and what, if anything, you think we should be particularly alert for?
Well, I think the big one, obviously, we slid out of the third division, old school division, now called Division 1, but in my head, the third division. We slid out of that, winning, I think it was 8 games, something like that. So it was dire. And then you're thinking, well, it's okay. We'll get into Division 4. We'll restructure ourselves, get ourselves sorted, and push on again. And I think we won something like 6 games the following year. I think we won something like 14 games over those 2 seasons. It was no matter how bad we've been recently, that for me, I did about 90 games across those 2 seasons, home and away. It was unbelievably, unremittingly grim, right? And it's that grimness, it's that lack of joy, it's that knowing you were going to games and thinking, we're never going to win here. We're never going to win a game. You go a goal down, never going to come back. Nothing in the team. Problems off the pitch. We had the white knight of Jerry Sherman coming along, sitting on supporters' buses going up to Everton, thinking who's a complete and utter shot. I'm not saying he's Mr. Jenkins, but all this talk of like some saviour's going to come along and put money in. But the really interesting one for me was, and I was thinking about this, I can't remember what the date was, but later on in Division 4, we played them down the road at Ninian. And we lost 4-0, and we got pelted with coins and all sorts, standing in the away end. It was about as grim as it could possibly get. And I was in my early 20s, I think. And I remember looking out at the team thinking, I'd be the most experienced player in this team. and that is the bit that really reminds me. We haven't got anybody who's got the experience to dig us out of the hole. And I'm thinking, that's the bit that really frightens me. We've got a callow team. We've got instability on the management front. Okay, we've just changed him, but that's not a stable position. And we've got a fan base that's throwing its hands up in the air, going, "My God, this is a shambles." And we've got concerns with how the club's being run. people leaving the club, poor communication, all of these things echo horribly to me. And they always say, don't they, if you fail to learn your lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat them. And my horrible fear is that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's supposed to be
no, but that context, I think, is really important. And there is a reason why we always talk about we go to football because we want those moments of hope and moments of joy. And when they're not there, and it's a trial and a trudge to games, then that is when a club is in that kind of spiral of decline that Reece talked about. So I suppose in that sense, go on.
We're all going to the game on the 29th, and we have joked that should we all just go for dinner instead? And although it is a joke, and I know we'll all end up going to the game, but at the 60-minute point against Boreham Wood last weekend, that actually seemed like quite a good go, expecting nothing.
Yeah, I mean, after that Boreham Wood game, I said I'm not going Saturday. It was only the late draw at Crewe made me go, oh, all right, maybe I will. But even then, we've got season tickets. I couldn't persuade either of my kids to go. They're like, there is no way on earth I'm going to watch that lot again. It's been too miserable too often. And you think, well, that's those conversations are happening up and down the county.
Yeah.
Well,
the funny thing that has made me laugh, because you have to look at the gallows humour in all of this, don't you? In that, as you know, I mostly do away, so I don't come home very often. I'll come back to Newport. And I am coming down on the 29th. I've spent, a second mortgage on the train fare to do it. And we haven't won since I last came down back in March. It's just incredible, isn't it? It's just incredible. It's just been bizarre in terms of that. But look, irrespective of what Jenkins says on Wednesday, effectively from that point, we've got 6 weeks, haven't we, till the end of the window to give Christian Fuchs something, right? That's going to make or break our season, isn't it? The next 6 weeks in many respects, irrespective of what might happen next season. If we're going to stay up, the next few weeks are the absolute key. I'm desperately hoping that Mr. Fuchs has got a clear plan. Otherwise, I have no idea why he's come in and taken the job. He must have a plan. I'm hoping he's got some connections, can get some better loans in. In terms of giving him the ammunition, in terms of, what you would do if you're, Mr. Fuchs or the transfer panel or whatever we've got, what would you do? That's what I'm interested in. Who's going to say, Reece, you've normally got a plan.
Priority one, and this may be tinfoil hat time, but priority one is keeping Sammy Braybrook, right? He's by far the best player in this team. So have we recruited Christian Fuchs with all his Leicester connections and credit in the bank? Is all this to keep Braybrook? So that's the main thing. I would like to pair Braybrook with someone. Christ, I don't know how long we've been asking for it, but someone big, physical, and mobile or athletic.
Let's get our lighters out as we start again our call for midfield bastard to come to Newport County.
So I've said this before. You don't need a bastard kicking people, right? What you need is a space eater. You need someone big, physical, mobile, who covers a lot of ground on the pitch, wins first and second balls, because for all Braybrook's ability, he is still even shorter than me. So, I think you need kind of a balance in there. And the other thing is, as Ed quite rightly pointed out in the WhatsApp group, a striker who can score goals. But, that's really difficult to come by, and they're not cheap. If anyone's got Adi Akinbay's number, Adi Akinbay, the panic buy. We need someone effective up top. And like you said earlier on, Ed, you could probably go through the entire squad and say where we could be better. Fullbacks, I think fullback is only a position we can improve if we can get one of the fullbacks we've got out. I think we've got a problem with Shepherd, and I was really positive about Shepherd signing. He was a player that I wanted us to go and get all summer.
Yeah.
But now he's not played in 4 months. He spent most of last season injured. At this point, you're kind of looking at it and you go, it wouldn't be a huge surprise to see him calling time on his career at the end of this season. Which I sincerely hope isn't the case. I hope he comes back and is effective for us. But, you know, we do have a limited budget. We are limited by the SCMP, which is another term that I've learned today. So I think to make moves, you know, we got to ship some out to get some in is also part of the problem. I would like us to get another centre half. But you could probably say that about every position, right? I'd like us to get 11 new players who are all better than the ones we've got. But that's not
only 11.
That's not realistic, is it? And it's not always an option because Carlisle went and got a load of new players, spent a load of money, and still got relegated. And then what the likelihood is as well, whoever you buy now is going to be who you have for next year. So if you buy players on big salaries, more than you can afford, can you live with that if we do go down next season?
Yeah. I mean, before I bring you in, Ed, I mean, one of the things that I have been thinking about is, and this is horrific, because going back to when I said, you know, we went out the league and then basically we went out of business, which touches on Reese's point about who we, you know, do you have to start thinking about, and I'm almost loath to say this, do you start buying players for the conference next season? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have to think about that? I'll leave that with you, Ed, because what are you going to come in with against? What are you going to do in your sixth? You're Christian Fuchs. What are you going to do?
All right. Well, if you're saying we're going to ship out some dead wood, let's take that as read, and you're going to let me buy 6 players, then I think probably the ones firstly, we're obviously getting a midfield bastard. We've not had one for 2 seasons. And whether you call them a space eater or a bastard, you know, you need someone who is an experienced, grizzled, no nonsense, one of those in the middle of the park, because I don't think any team can function without one. And that's why we haven't functioned for 2 seasons. So I'm getting one of those. I'm getting a right back, because it's obvious every team we play are targeting our fullbacks. Now, let's be optimistic and say Tom Davis somehow is able to keep fit for the rest of the season. Great. I still don't think we've got anyone who can play at right back. So a right back, a central midfielder, 2 strikers, because I think we need 2 strikers, because none of the strikers we've got at the moment are going to score the goals. Apoku is the best of the bunch, but he's, you know, been injured once already. He's now injured again. I'm not sure we can rely on him. So I think you need 2 strikers. And then if I've got a spare one, I'd be torn between either a left back, in case Tom Davis does not remain fit, which statistically seems likely, or possibly a winger, because we seem to now be going back towards wanting to play with wingers, and I'm not sure the ones we've got are great. Camwa looked, like I said earlier, a shadow of his former self, and there's no one who can play on the right. The positives, I think we've got 2 goalkeepers who are not perfect by any means, but, you know, they're solid enough. Unlike Reece, I actually think we've probably got a good number of options at centre-half. I think the problems are on the full-backs rather than in the centre. And I think we've got a good number of creative midfielders. So, you know, the cupboard is not bare everywhere, but it's very bare in some parts. And to your question, Ian, about how much of that is preparing for we might be in the conference next season, yeah, I mean, I think that has to be in your mind, but it depends on the scale of the ambition of whoever is coming in investing. So, yeah, it depends who's writing the checks and how many noughts they're putting on them.
And whether they're able to. Whether we're able to. I think that's the bit that is confusing me a little bit with these deadlines on the SCMP thing. You know, that's the bit that confuses me a bit. But let's see. I'm with you. Midfield needs strengthening. We need someone alongside Braybrooke. From my point of view, we need somebody up top. Definitely. I think we need to ship out pretty much anyone we've got on loan, apart from Braybrooke and Apoku if he's fit. And then can Fuchs use his contact book to get us some better loans? So could we sign 3, maybe 4, and then can we get 3, maybe 4 loans? Is what I'm thinking. Is maybe we could do, but quite who and how who they are, because we're not going to be the only people fishing. And I think that someone who knows much more about football than me was saying that what you need to do is stack it a little bit. So you go early with a couple of players you can get straight away, but what you're going to look at later in the window. So don't panic, because later in the window, the teams that are going to go up into League One will be looking to get rid of the players that they don't think can make it in League One, but for our purposes will be brilliant. So you do a bit of a double prong thing there. Whether we've got the smarts to do that, I'm not convinced, because our recruitment so far has been not brilliant.
Once again, getting my tinfoil hat out. How many Fox Academy players are we about to sign? Another interesting, again, tinfoil hat. A lot of the players we have signed, the likes of your Cam Evanses, were all associated to an agency that Mr. Jenkins was consulting at before purchasing the club. Again, tinfoil hat, not accusing anyone of anything, but it's an interesting observation.
Yeah, it is an interesting observation, and I think it will be interesting, Reece, to see who does come in, and are they linked to the Foxes Academy, who might all be brilliant, but I suspect will all be about 20 and 21, and that goes back to my point.
And very good at passing it along the back line and back to the goalkeeper and back along the back line. But what happens when they've got a rugged 6'6" centre forward with a shaved head and a broken nose running at them?
I thought it was very interesting. If you looked at Sammy Braybrooke's interview this week, which was on the socials, which I thought was actually very good. And one of the things he did say, as well as saying he was happy to stay, which was great, but he was saying, how much more physically demanding this playing in League Two is to anything he's played previously. And I think the powers that be need to listen to that, because you can't pack a team full of people who haven't played that level of physicality before. And we've been saying it since the dot, but that's what one of the things I'm really hoping for from Wednesday, is a little bit of humility from Mr. Jenkins to go, maybe my plan is right, but I've gone for revolution, not evolution. There's a way of saying you still believe in promoting youth and selling players and all that sort of stuff, but there's a balance that we need, and we just don't have that yet. So I want to see that corrected both on Wednesday and in the January window is what I would like to see. So thinking about where we currently are, does anyone got, I think, Ed, you might have our predictions lurking around somewhere, mightn't you? Which slightly worries me.
I do.
What will we... I can't see that. Right, okay. Who's that crazy person had us down at finishing 15th?
That was Alfie, the optimism of youth.
The optimism of youth, right, okay.
Based on where we are now, even Jack looks optimistic.
So for the listeners, the people who are listening to the audio version rather than watching the YouTube version, so Alfie said 15th, I said 19th, Ian said 20th, Jamie and Reece both said 22nd, and Jack said 23rd. And we all roundly mocked him for being a curmudgeon, but actually, even he is looking like a starry-eyed optimist. So, we so far we're not bang on, but there's a lot of football still to be played.
There's a lot of points up for grabs. I'm still feeling I can make that 20th. I'm going to win this year. I've got it in the bag. Right. Okay. So I think for those listening, if there is something that comes out on Wednesday, the pod will be there. We will attempt to maybe do a sort of emergency pod after that or the next day and sort of reflect on what's gone on. if it's the same old, I think we'll probably give it a miss and wait till we get to Christmas and do something different. But we'll obviously report on it. And if there's something good to say, and we're all hoping there is something good to say, we'll reflect on that after Wednesday. So thinking about shout outs and beefs. Have we got some? Because we're still a bit negative, aren't we? Have we got anything positive we can do in terms of shout outs? Who's got any?
Yeah, I'll do one. I think I've probably given him a shout out before, but I'm going to do it again. Young Luke, who does the matchday music. We talked earlier about not everything at the club is as professional as we'd want it to be, and people not taking everything seriously. I think he's done a smashing job this season of, he's come up with curated themed playlists on match days. He's put up the playlist onto the social medias beforehand so you can see what's coming. And, there's always a few comments people saying, "Oh, I don't like any of the stuff on there." And you think, well, there's probably one thing that you will like, or open your heart to maybe listening to something different. That's good for all of us. But I think Luke's done a smashing job, and it filled my heart. There are a couple of tracks on Saturday that I particularly enjoyed, and he is someone who more people at the club should listen to, because he's taking his job seriously and giving us a little bit of joy. So good on you.
And I've not been to the ground for a long time, but I'm looking forward to that on the 29th and looking forward to hearing that. And as some people know from my socials, I'm a big music fan. Next week, I'm going to see my 100th band of the year. So that's quite impressive. I'm quite impressed by that. For an old curmudgeon like me, I was quite impressed by that. So I'm loving the fact that he puts up the stuff within on the Newport website and on the app and on socials. I think that's really good, getting the playlists out, stuff like that. So yeah. Excellent stuff. Reese, have you got a shout out? You don't have to have one.
Yeah, I'm struggling here.
All right. we can go straight to Ed's beefs if you want.
No. Well, Reese can have a beef. I'm not.
You have a beef, Ed.
I'm going to be cheerful.
You have a beef, Ed. Reese.
All right. Okay. So, at the risk of, and one more thing about the media and comms. The post-match interview from
I know what you're going to say.
Last weekend,
and the one, yeah.
I don't know what they're using to record it, but it looks like my Sony Bloggy from 2005. What on earth is going on with the quality? Because I could record something better than that on my phone, and everyone owns a phone that is capable of doing better than that. I just don't understand how in 2025, nearly 2026, we are recording something of that poor quality. And I get, the other weekend, it was really windy. If it's blowing a gale, I completely concede that the audio quality might be a bit iffy. But the picture quality should still exist. This is being recorded on a potato. So just take your job seriously. If your job is to record media and comms for the club, buy a fucking camera, right?
And if it's blowing a gale, say, can we do the interview indoors? There's a tip. You can have that one for free. I agree 100%. I have heard, and I don't know how true this is, I have heard that the equipment they were using has had a water leak within it. So there's been a water ingress within it, which has caused some difficulties. So I've heard that. I don't know how true that is. So it could be that, but yeah, we need to up our game, I would suggest, on that front. So fair play. We've tried to zoom out a little bit. We are going to try and come back to you after Wednesday if there's something exciting that happens as a result of that. If not, the next proper episode we're going to pull out, it will be a bit of a Christmas special, and we promise you we're not going to talk about what the current state of plays is. We obviously want to wish you all the best wherever you are. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. Tune in, and we'll get the episode up on there. Big thanks to Reese and to Ed for joining us tonight, and for trying to work out how we can move forward. These are tough times. We can be critical, but we've got to try and pull together. We've got to try and think how we can get through this. Anyone's got any good ideas, anyone who can help the club, anyone who can volunteer, there's positive things that people can do as well. But they are tough times for the County Loyal. Remember, it's always darkest before the dawn. So just remember that. Things can get brighter. Look after yourselves, everyone. Look after each other. And as always, keep it county.